Hi, I'm Jody Daly, and this is Let's Talk, where consumers like us talk about the things that matter. Well, when we decided to do a show on where people get their information, I thought it would kind of be age-related. Older people would flip on the TV or pick up a newspaper, and younger folks would swipe their phone. Well, what we found out kind of surprised us, so don't go away.
Supermarkets can get pretty confusing nowadays. So many aisles, so many products. How can you save time and money when you shop? Get into the habit of buying your store's store brands. You get the same quality as national brands and save at the cash register. No apps, no coupons, just money in your pocket. Give them a try and smile your way through the supermarket.
We used to get our information from the newspaper, the radio, or TV, and of course, the back fence. And we got it once in the morning with the paper and at 6 o'clock at night on TV news. But TV, radio, and print have all taken a backseat to the internet, and more specifically, social media, which is 24/7. Translation of that, a lot of information all the time. My guests today are Ellyn. She's a wife and mom. Her daughter is 14, and her husband reads the New York Times from front to back. But there's no TV in the house. And Ellyn picks what she wants to see through social media. Am I right?
Mostly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, Lea and Amy are parents of 3 children, all under 9. They don't watch broadcast TV, and you limit the kids' access through their little devices, right? For the parental
Absolutely.
controls. Oh, Lea's like, oh, you bet we do. And Taylor, you have become a real influencer through your work at MTV and also the New York Times. I'd like to welcome you all to the show. Thanks for being here. And I want to ask one question. How do you guys figure out what information you want to take in and what you just want to throw away? Anybody, just let me. Ellyn, go ahead.
I look at the journalists. There are certain journalists I follow, which are helpful on Twitter, and that informs me on which articles I want to read. I do podcasts, and again, it's shows that I'm interested in that will inform me of the news that happened today or yesterday.
Okay, so you actually bring it in on your phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I bring it in,
Yeah.
because that's our device.
Taylor, how about you?
I exclusively get my news from social platforms as well as podcasts.
Okay, Lea, Amy?
I get my news almost exclusively at the local level. I used to be a national news and political junkie, and I have limited my news intake through my phone now to almost exclusively local news.
Local news. And Amy, how about you?
Social media mostly, and I teach preschool. I work with 20 women. Something's going on, I'm going to hear about it at work immediately. Probably before the news people know about it.
Now, Ellyn, you used to have cable. You used to have broadcast TV come into your apartment, and tell us why that stopped.
Well, it wasn't so healthy for the marriage. We had a new baby at home, and it was hard to have a football game on for 4 hours when we both work, and it was very time. So I was less patient than I could be, and then I was watching reality TV, which didn't go well for my husband's tolerance of me, and so it was, well, let's just get rid of it.
And what's it been like without having any kind of broadcast in your apartment?
Well, we are so much more patient with each other reading than we are with watching television. So that's really improved the atmosphere, and we get stuff done in the apartment much better because we're listening, or that's our quiet time.
Cool. And you have a 14-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Well, how does she feel about not having TV?
Oh, not happy.
I guess that was sort of a redundant kind of rhetorical question.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to reading, Amy, you do have one paper that you like.
The Homewood Star. It's the local newspaper in our cute little hometown of Homewood, Alabama. And it's all local. It's what's going on in the town. It's sports, the local high school, the local middle school. It's what's going on at the library, what shows are happening this weekend. It's just happy.
And I think that's the point. It's happy. Now, Lea, you said you used to be a news junkie. What made you give it up?
Well, primarily, I wanted to improve my mental health. I think with the deep divide in bipartisan politics, the political shows have become so sensationalized and so divisive that I found myself in my leisure time catching up with politics and national news in a stressful environment, kind of grinding my jaw all the time and not being satisfied that I was actually getting objective reporting and news.
So what do you spend your time doing now that you're not doing all that?
Well, I probably am not as caught up on national politics and national news, and it's made for some embarrassing moments around the coffee pot or at cocktail parties sometimes. But now I focus just on local news because there's not that element to what's immediately going on around us in the state of Alabama.
Do you, Taylor, now you're listening to all this. What are you thinking over there?
That it's interesting, but I understand it.
Yeah.
I think I have a different perspective, mainly because I work in media, and so I feel like it's part of my job to know what's going on and to be in tune. And to what Lee was saying, it can absolutely take a toll on your mental health, and I think it's a matter of knowing when to put your phone down, and it can be tricky to parse what's important and what you should be paying attention to, but everything in moderation, and you have to take it day by day.
When you were saying, when to put your phone down.
Yeah.
I want to ask each one of you, how do you decide what deserves your attention? Go ahead.
I have to go to work-related.
Work-related, okay.
First.
Lee?
My response would be very similar. My phone now, it used to have every notification from every news network pop up on it right and left, and now it's just a work tool. So I'm not taking much news through it at all.
If I'm honest, what shows up in my social media feed, if it interests me, I'm going to click on it.
I bet you do. And Taylor, how about you?
For me, Twitter is probably my most used app, so I'll look at that the first thing when I get up in the morning, probably even before Instagram, and it's the last thing that I see before I go to bed at night. And I'll look at what's being shared, what sources they're coming through, who is sharing it, and then that'll kind of determine whether or not I continue to follow the story.
Awesome. We are going to continue with Taylor when we come back because she's going to give us the journalist point of view about all of this, so don't go away.
Want to make your mealtime a little more enjoyable? Check out the ready-to-heat, ready-to-serve meals and side dishes offered at your favorite supermarket. Whether it's chilled or fresh or frozen, you can taste the cuisines of the world. And if you buy the supermarket store brands, you can be sure of quality and freshness at reasonable prices. Give them a try and add something special to mealtime.
Welcome back. We've been talking about how we all find out what's going on in the world with everything coming at us 24/7 and changing just as fast. Welcome. Taylor, I want to go back to what you were talking about. Why do certain people pay attention to certain things? Is it because they feel they have to? Or like Amy said, what I'm interested in?
I think it could be a couple of different reasons, and I think that we all have bias, and so if you're more liberal, there's certain sources that you're going to read versus if you're more conservative leaning, you're going to lean towards certain journalists or news outlets or platforms to get your information. So I think it all depends what kind of consumer you are, and I think age has a lot to do with it too, because that's going to determine.
Why are you looking at us over here?
I'm not looking
yes,
at
you
I
are.
have
You're
a-
looking.
I swear that I'm not.
I don't know. She's a Twitter girl too, you know.
I know, but I think it depends for how a 80-something-year-old person who, for one of my grandmothers, for example, she doesn't have the internet in her home. She lives in Connecticut. She gets the Hartford Courant every day. She does not know what's going on the internet versus a 15, 16-year-old who doesn't have any physical media, and they're getting all of their information from what they see people sharing on Twitter or Instagram. Probably not Facebook, because most young people don't have Facebook accounts.
I'll remember that, and I'll get rid of my Facebook account, and I'll be hip. You bring up a really good point about your grandmother. Do you think that we are as informed as our parents, more informed than our parents, or just ill-informed?
I think more.
Really? Go ahead, why?
Because it's everywhere. You get it through social media before you can even hear it on the news, before you can even read it in a newspaper. Somebody's already shared an article. It's already out there. So I think we're more informed.
Do you think we're better informed? Go ahead.
I think we're more informed, but not necessarily better informed.
True.
I think, it's quantity over quality. I think more is coming at us from many different angles, and it's not getting the good old-fashioned journalism, objective lens that it should get, and is much more slanted. So,
And this isn't just for news. This is for everything. This is for entertainment. This is for any kind of information. This is for weather.
Yeah.
Oh, today it's a storm, and then 5 minutes later it's a hurricane, and 5 minutes after that. So how do you keep up, Taylor, as a journalist?
It's really tricky to keep up. And I think that I would agree with Lee in saying that we are more informed, but with that, we have saturation overload when it comes to the media landscape and who can you trust. And when everything is changing literally by the minute, where do you go to? And it can be really tricky, especially when you have platforms that are moving in real time like Twitter. So for me, I have to just trust my sources and lean on the people and the sources that I think that are going to give me the most information in the most accurate way possible. That's all you can do.
I want to ask you three, how do you protect your kids from all that's out there? I mean, go ahead, Lee.
Well, it's really scary.
You keep them in their rooms, right?
Our children are young enough to where we haven't quite crossed over that precipice yet, but I ask a lot of parents with children that are at that precipice what they're doing and what works. And we're hearing that 12 is the precipice, and you really do need to watch very carefully what they're looking at and put a lot of controls on their devices.
Ellyn, you have an over 12 at home.
And so at 14, the parental controls, but then you have the social where not all the other kids have those things on. And so they begin talking about some movie or whatever that was beyond the age of what would have been appropriate to watch. So it's a constant, it's hard today.
And to that point, Amy, you've got how many little ones running around the space at one time, and they all have different parental controls at home, right?
No, they're all the same.
Oh, really?
I mean,
no, I'm not talking about your kids. I'm talking about at school.
Oh, well, they're little.
They're little.
They're 2.
Oh, they're really
They're really little.
They barely speak.
Exactly. No, they speak, but they're not there yet, luckily.
But they probably know how to turn on an
They
iPad.
do.
Yeah.
They do know how to turn on an iPad.
I think the most frightening thing I ever saw was my niece at 2 walking down the street with a phone in her ear. And I thought to myself, things will never be the same for this generation. Taylor, where do you think this generation is going to be getting their news and their information 20 to 30 years from now?
I think that it's going to continue to be a mobile-driven generation and future, and we're going to continue to get most of our news and content through social platforms. Whether those social platforms will be the same, if we'll all still be using Facebook or Twitter in 20, 30
Apparently
years.
not Facebook anymore. So
Yeah, maybe not. But I think that we're going to continue to get our news primarily through mobile devices, and I think that we're going to see an uptick and a trend of micro communities and people really leaning into those for a sense of community and comfort and just information.
So think about what we just were talking about. Anything hit home with you guys that you'd like to reinforce for our audience that we've been talking about? Ellyn?
Geez, I mean, as far as the children.
What we've been talking about. Pretty much Ellyn just said, no, I've learned nothing.
No.
I'm saying nothing. No, I'm just kidding. Anything that you'll take with you?
Yeah, actually, I think that turning it off and looking local, which happens when I get to a point that's too far along, I'll, stop with the news and I'll go to my projects on how I want to make progress with myself. I think your method is good. I will take that home.
Perfect.
One comment that Taylor made that really kind of resonated with me is that you really have to be careful ferreting out your sources. And knowing your source and sort of vetting your source and getting comfortable with your sources, and then I think choose those and stay with them rather than just take on the huge volume of information that's thrown
Okay.
at us.
Amy?
I agree with what Lee and Taylor are saying.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to
totally.
know your source.
And
you
that
can't
goes back
just
to high school when we started writing papers, and they all said you need a couple of sources, so it just doesn't sound like coming from one thing.
right.
Taylor, I'm going to bring it home here.
Sure. I would say definitely from just a consumer standpoint and from a journalist standpoint to vet your sources. We live in a super reactive society where people love to just become outraged without actually reading. Make sure that you're reading the article before you're sharing it, before you're retweeting it, and also to support local journalism. And it's just as important as any other major journalistic platform. And they're all trying to do their jobs and give you the best news possible. So you need to support it on all levels.
So I'm just going to recap. Twitter, local, Twitter, and I'm afraid I still like the back fence. Anyway, for those of you at home, thank you too for joining us. For more information on what you've seen on today's show, visit Store Brands USA, the channel here on YouTube, or go to storebrandsusa.com for shopping information, recipe ideas, and more. I'm Jody Daly, and I'll see you next time on another edition of Let's Talk.